The evening air was soft as silk against your skin as you walked the familiar path toward the old garden. You had passed this way countless times before, but tonight felt different somehow, quieter, more peaceful, as if the world itself had decided to slow down just for you. The gate stood before you, wrought iron painted deep forest green, its surface dappled with the silver light of the rising moon. Wisteria draped over the archway above, its purple blooms long since faded, but leaving behind a gentle, sweet fragrance that lingered in the cooling air. You reached out and touched the gate's smooth metal surface, still warm from the day's sun, and it swung open without a sound. Inside, the garden stretched before you in shades of blue and silver. The moon, full and luminous, hung low in the darkening sky, so large and bright that it seemed close enough to touch. Its light transformed everything it fell upon. The stone pathways gleamed like rivers of pearl. The flowers became strange and beautiful in their nocturnal paleness, and even the air itself seemed to shimmer with a tender, magical quality. You stepped through the gate and felt something shift. Perhaps it was just the transition from the world outside to this enclosed sanctuary, but it felt as though you had crossed an invisible threshold into somewhere beyond the ordinary. Your shoulders, which had been tight with the day's tensions, began to soften. Your breathing, shallow and quick from hurry and habit, deepened and slowed. The path before you was made of smooth, rounded stones, worn by years of footsteps into a surface that felt almost soft beneath your feet. You began to walk, following the path as it curved gently between raised beds of herbs and flowers. On either side, lavender grew in abundance, its stems heavy with flowers that had dried in the summer sun. As you brushed past, the plants released their scent, calming, soothing, ancient, and you breathed it in deeply. There was no hurry here. Time moved differently in this garden, you realized. Or perhaps time didn't move at all, but simply existed as an eternal present moment, peaceful and complete. Each step you took was its own small meditation, your feet finding the path without effort, your body knowing the way, even if your mind did not. A fountain stood at the first intersection of paths, a simple stone basin where water bubbled up from some hidden source below and spilled over the sides in a continuous, gentle cascade. The sound of it was like music, not the complex, demanding music of the day, but something simpler, more essential. Just water returning to water, falling and falling in an endless rhythm that seemed to echo the beating of your own heart. You paused beside the fountain and trailed your fingers through the cool water. It was clean and clear, reflecting the moon's face in its rippling surface. For a moment, you saw yourself reflected there too. Just a shadow, just a presence. And then the water stilled, and there was only the moon, constant and serene. The garden was not silent, but it was quiet in a way that allowed you to hear the gentler sounds that usually went unnoticed. Crickets chirped in the grass, their song rising and falling in waves. Somewhere in the distance, a nightbird called, its voice soft and questioning. The leaves of the trees whispered together in the slight breeze, sharing secrets in a language older than words. You continued on, following the path deeper into the garden. On your left, rose bushes grew in profusion, their summer blooms now faded, but still beautiful in their final transformation. Some petals still clung to the stems, pale as ghosts, while others had fallen to carpet the earth below in a soft blanket of pink and white and cream. You knelt down and picked up a single petal, paper thin and delicate, and held it in your palm. It weighed almost nothing, this remnant of summer beauty. But it was perfect in its imperfection. Curled at the edges, faded but not gone, still carrying within it the memory of warmer days. The moon climbed higher as you walked, its light growing stronger, more silver, more sure. The shadows it cast were deep and soft at once, pooling beneath the garden benches and in the hollows between the plants. These were not frightening shadows, but companionable ones, the kind that invited rest and reflection. Ahead, you could see where the path opened into a wider space, a lawn, perhaps, or a clearing where the garden's heart might be found. But you were not in a hurry to reach it. Each step of the journey was its own destination, each moment complete in itself. So you walked slowly, very slowly, letting your attention rest on small things. The texture of bark on the apple trees that lined the path, the way moonlight caught in a spider's web and transformed it into threads of silver. The soft earth beneath your feet where the stones gave way to grass. A bench appeared beside the path, weathered wood gone silver with age, positioned perfectly to face a bed of night-blooming jasmine. You sat down, feeling the wood's coolness through your clothes, and simply breathed. The jasmine's scent was intoxicating, but not overwhelming, sweet and green and mysterious, like a question that didn't need an answer. Sitting there, you realized how tired you were. Not just physically tired, though your body was certainly ready for rest, but tired in a deeper way. Tired of moving fast, of thinking hard, of trying to be everything to everyone. Here in the garden, you didn't have to be anything at all. You could simply be, existing in this moment, breathing this air, watching this moon rise higher in the darkening sky. Your eyes grew heavy. The garden seemed to grow softer around you, its edges blurring slightly, its sounds becoming more distant and dreamlike. But you were not quite ready to sleep yet. There was more of the garden to see, more of this peace to drink in. So you stood slowly and continued on your way. The path split ahead, offering choices. To the left, it curved toward what looked like a small orchard, trees heavy with ripening fruit. To the right, it descended gentle steps toward what might be a pond or pool. And straight ahead, it continued on toward that open space you had glimpsed earlier, where the moon's light fell unobstructed and full. You chose the center path, drawn forward by something you couldn't name. Your footsteps were almost silent now on the grass that had begun to replace the stone. The air grew cooler, fresher, carrying with it the scent of water and growing things. And all around, the garden breathed with you, its presence as steady and reassuring as an old friend who knows when to speak and when to stay quiet. As you walked forward, the path opened into a circular clearing, and your breath caught softly at the beauty of it. Here, at what must be the very heart of the garden, the moon reigned supreme. Without the canopy of trees to filter its light, the silver glow fell full and unobstructed, illuminating everything with a gentle radiance that seemed to come not just from above, but from the earth itself. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient oak tree, its trunk thick and gnarled with age, its branches spreading wide like welcoming arms. The tree must have been here for hundreds of years, you thought, long before the garden was planted, long before anyone had laid these paths or planted these flowers. It had the quality of permanence, of something so deeply rooted it could never be moved or shaken. Just looking at it made you feel more grounded, more connected to the earth beneath your feet. Around the base of the tree, a carpet of soft moss grew, emerald green even in the moon's silver light, springy and inviting. Someone had placed smooth stones in a circle around the tree, creating a natural boundary between the moss and the wild meadow flowers that filled the rest of the clearing. These flowers, chamomile and evening primrose, sweet alyssum and night phlox, swayed gently in the breeze, their pale blooms like stars fallen to earth. You approached the trees slowly, reverently, feeling as though you were entering a sacred space. The trunk was so wide that 3 people holding hands could barely encircle it. Its bark was deeply furrowed, creating patterns that looked almost like writing in some ancient, forgotten language. You placed your palm against it and felt the subtle warmth stored there from the day's sun, the slight roughness of the bark, the solid, unshakable presence of centuries of growth. The tree seemed to hum with quiet life. If you listened very carefully, and here in this peaceful place, you might hear the slow movement of sap through its vessels, the whisper of leaves communicating through their roots, the patient, timeless rhythm of growth and rest that had continued for longer than you could imagine. At the base of the tree, nestled among the roots, was a hollow that formed a natural seat. The wood there had been worn smooth by time and perhaps by countless other visitors who had also found this place and chosen to rest here. You lowered yourself into this seat, feeling how perfectly it cradled your body, how naturally you fit into this space, as though it had been waiting just for you. From here, seated with your back against the ancient oak, you could see the entire clearing. It was a perfect circle, you realized now, not by accident, but by design. Someone long ago had created this space with intention, had chosen this tree as the center, and built the garden around it. The thought pleased you, this idea of concentric circles of care and attention radiating out from this single point. Above, through the tree's branches, you could see the moon perfectly framed, as though the tree itself was holding it up for your viewing. Stars had begun to appear, faint at first, but growing brighter as your eyes adjusted. You recognized a few constellations: Orion with his belt, the Big Dipper pointing toward the North Star, Cassiopeia sprawling across the sky in her celestial chair. But mostly, you just watched the vast expanse of the night sky, feeling yourself grow smaller and somehow larger at the same time, both insignificant and infinitely precious in the grand scope of the universe. The breeze picked up slightly, and the tree's leaves rustled overhead in response. It sounded like gentle rain, or distant applause, or simply the earth breathing. The sound washed over you in waves, and with each wave, you felt yourself relaxing more deeply. Your shoulders dropped, your jaw unclenched. Your hands, which had been gripping without you realizing it, opened and rested softly on your lap. You noticed a bird's nest tucked into a fork of branches above. Empty now, the fledglings long since flown, but still perfectly formed, still serving as a reminder of the cycles of life that continued regardless of human worry or rush. In spring, a mother bird had built that nest, one twig at a time. She had laid her eggs there, kept them warm, raised her young until they were ready to fly. And then she had left, trusting that when the time came, she would know what to do again. There was something comforting in that thought. The way nature knew its rhythms, followed its patterns without question or doubt. The tree didn't worry about whether it was growing fast enough or in the right direction. It simply grew, reaching toward the light, sending roots down into the dark earth, doing what trees do without anxiety or hesitation. The flowers didn't fret about whether they were beautiful enough. They bloomed in their season, released their fragrance, made their seeds, and rested complete in their purpose. What if life could be that simple? Not easy, perhaps, but simple. Growth and rest, effort and release. Blooming in your season and trusting that the rest would take care of itself. The thought was so soothing that you let your eyes close just for a moment. The darkness behind your eyelids was soft and welcoming, not empty, but full of gentle color, deep purples and blues, fading to black at the edges. You could still sense the moon's light, even with your eyes closed, could feel it on your face like a blessing. When you opened your eyes again, had it been seconds or minutes, the clearing seemed even more beautiful than before. Or perhaps you were simply seeing it more clearly now, with a vision unobstructed by the constant chatter of thought that usually filled your mind. Each flower was perfect in its particularity. Each blade of grass was exactly where it needed to be. The tree, the moon, the stars, the gentle breeze, all of it was a symphony of being, and you were part of it, no more and no less important than any other element, but essential nonetheless. A moth fluttered past, pale wings catching the moonlight as it danced from flower to flower. You watched its erratic flight, how it seemed to have no particular destination, but moved purely for the joy of movement, drawn to light and sweetness, alive in this moment, and no other. It landed on a night phlox near your feet, and you could see the delicate patterns on its wings, the soft fuzz of its body, the way its antennae trembled as it drank nectar from the flower. Everything was alive here, not just the obvious things, the plants and insects and tree, but everything. The stones held warmth and history. The air carried stories. The earth beneath you hummed with invisible life, millions of microorganisms and fungi and roots all interweaving in a network of communication and support. You were sitting on top of an entire universe, invisible to your eyes, but there nonetheless, holding everything up, breaking down and building up. Death and life dancing together in an eternal embrace. The thought should have been overwhelming, but instead it was deeply peaceful. You were not alone. You had never been alone. You were part of this vast web of life, connected to everything, supported by systems you couldn't see but could trust were there. The tree knew this. The flowers knew this. And now, sitting here in the moon's gentle light, you knew it too. Your breathing had become so slow and deep that you barely noticed it anymore. Each breath in drew the garden's peace into your lungs, and each breath out released tension you didn't know you'd been holding. In and out, like waves on a shore, like the moon's pull on the tides, like the eternal rhythm that underlies all existence. Time became meaningless. You might have been sitting there for minutes or hours. It didn't matter. There was nowhere else you needed to be, nothing else you needed to do. The world outside the garden, with all its demands and deadlines and noise, seemed very far away now. Like a dream half remembered upon waking, already fading into insignificance. After a time, though time had lost its usual meaning here, you felt drawn to explore further. Rising from your seat among the oak's roots took effort, not because you were physically tired, but because you had settled so deeply into peace that movement seemed almost unnecessary. But there was more of the garden still to discover, and something called you onward. You followed a narrow path that led away from the clearing, winding between tall grasses that whispered as you passed. The ground beneath your feet was soft here, slightly damp, and you realized you were descending gradually, moving toward lower ground. The air grew cooler and carried the unmistakable scent of water, fresh and clean, with hints of green growing things and earth. The path opened suddenly onto the shore of a pond, and you stopped, transfixed by the sight before you. The water was perfectly still, its surface like black glass, reflecting the moon and stars so perfectly that it was impossible to tell where the sky ended and the pond began. It was as though you stood at the edge of the universe itself, looking down into infinite depths of space. Willow trees ringed the pond, their long branches trailing in the water, creating gentle ripples that caught the moonlight and scattered it into silver fragments. These ripples spread outward in perfect circles, intersecting with other circles, creating patterns of incredible complexity that somehow resolved into perfect harmony. You watched these patterns for a long time, mesmerized by their beauty, by the way they demonstrated how individual actions could create effects that rippled out far beyond their origin. A wooden dock extended into the pond, its weathered boards silver in the moonlight. You walked out onto it, your footsteps creating small, creaking sounds that seemed loud in the stillness, but not jarring. They were part of the pond's song, just another note in its nocturnal symphony. At the end of the dock, you sat down, dangling your legs over the edge, your feet just inches above the water's surface. The wood was smooth and cool beneath you, worn by weather and time into a surface as comfortable as any chair. You could see your reflection in the water, a dark silhouette against the reflected sky. But you barely recognized yourself. This version of you looked peaceful, unburdened, free. Small fish occasionally disturbed the surface, creating tiny ripples that spread outward. More circles within circles, more evidence of connection and consequence. You wondered what the fish thought about, if they thought at all, swimming through their dark world, guided by instinct and current. Their lives seemed enviably simple: swim, eat, rest, swim again. No regrets about the past, no anxiety about the future, just this eternal present, this moment of being alive in cool water under a bright moon. A frog called from somewhere among the reeds that grew thick along the far shore. Its voice was deep and resonant, a single note that seemed to come from the earth itself. Another frog answered, and then another, until a whole chorus had begun, their voices overlapping and interweaving in a pattern that was somehow both random and perfect. You listened to their song and felt your own breathing synchronize with its rhythm. Deep calls, long pauses, then the next deep call rising from the darkness. The moon had climbed higher now, growing smaller and whiter as it rose, but its reflection in the pond remained perfect, undisturbed by the slight breeze that occasionally ruffled the surface. You stared at this reflected moon, this twin of the one above, and felt a strange doubling of consciousness, as though you existed both here on the dock and there in the reflection, as though you were both the observer and the observed, both separate and connected. Dragonflies sleeping in the reeds occasionally shifted position, their bodies catching the light for just a moment before settling back into invisibility. In the morning, they would wake and hunt, flashing across the pond's surface in brilliant displays of speed and color. But now, they rested, as all things must rest, gathering energy for tomorrow's flight. You lay back on the dock, feeling the hard wood against your spine, and look straight up at the sky. From this angle, with the trees forming a frame around the open space above, it felt as though you were looking out rather than up, as though the sky was not above you but ahead of you, as though you could simply step off the dock and float up into that vast expanse of stars and darkness. The stars were fully visible now, thousands upon thousands of them, more than you had ever seen in the city or suburbs, where lights drowned out all but the brightest points. Here, in the garden's darkness, they blazed in their full glory, white and blue and red, constant and flickering, arranged in patterns that humans had been reading meaning into since the first person looked up and wondered what those lights might be. Some of those stars had died already, you knew. Their light was still reaching Earth, still visible to your eyes. But the stars themselves had collapsed, or exploded, or simply faded away millennia ago. You were looking at the past, at light that had traveled for years, or centuries, or longer, to reach your eyes in this moment. The thought should have been sad, but instead, it felt profound and somehow comforting. Evidence that even ending things could still shine, could still offer beauty and light to those who came after. A shooting star traced a bright line across your vision, so quick you might have missed it if you'd blinked. You watched its path, the brief bright streak of rock and metal burning up in Earth's atmosphere, and made a wish without quite meaning to. Not a wish for something to be different, but a wish for this moment to somehow stay with you, for this peace to remain accessible, even when you left the garden and returned to the ordinary world. The pond's presence was so calming that you felt your body growing heavier, sinking more deeply into the dock, your edges blurring and softening, until you weren't quite sure where you ended and the garden began. Your breathing had slowed to almost nothing, each breath a long, slow tide of air moving in and out. No effort, no thought, just the body, doing what bodies do, keeping you alive while you rested. Somewhere in the reeds, you could hear water moving, perhaps a spring feeding the pond, or a small stream flowing out of it. The sound was gentle, constant, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. You listened to it and felt your own heart slow to match its rhythm, felt every cell in your body beginning to release and relax, felt the last remnants of tension draining away like water into earth. Eventually, though eventually had lost all meaning in this timeless place, you rose from the dock and made your way back to the path. Your body moved dreamlike now, each step slow and fluid, as though you were moving through water rather than air. The world had taken on a soft focus quality, edges blurred, colors muted into shades of silver and shadow, everything gentled by moonlight and peace. The path led you away from the pond, climbing slightly back toward drier ground, and you found yourself in what seemed to be a different section of the garden entirely. Here, Someone had planted only flowers that bloomed at night or released their fragrance after sunset. It was a garden designed for darkness, for the secret life that emerges when the sun goes down. Moonflowers climbed a trellis to your right, their huge white blooms luminous in the darkness, each one unfurled and open like a satellite dish aimed at the moon. You stopped to admire them, these flowers that slept through daylight and woke at dusk. Their biology inverted from the normal pattern. They seemed exotic and strange, but also perfectly adapted to their purpose, drawing moths with their pale color and sweet scent, ensuring pollination even in the dark. Night-blooming jasmine grew in profusion here, its tiny white flowers almost invisible, but its scent unmistakable, rich and sweet and slightly intoxicating, like the essence of all flowers distilled into a single fragrance. You breathed it in deeply, feeling it fill your lungs, your blood, your brain, until you were dizzy with sweetness. 4 o'clocks lined the path, their trumpet-shaped flowers in shades of white and pale yellow, each one marked with delicate striations that created patterns like marble or rivers or the veins in your wrist. They too released their scent at night, a different fragrance from the jasmine, lighter, more lemony, with hints of vanilla and powder. You walked slowly through this night garden, stopping often to lean close to different flowers, to learn their individual scents, to appreciate the way each one had evolved its own strategy for survival in the darkness. Some lured moths with scent, others with pale color that showed up in moonlight, still others with a nectar so sweet that bats would visit them, hovering with their strange leathery wings while they fed. A garden bench appeared beside the path, positioned beneath an arbor heavy with climbing roses that had finished blooming months ago, but still created a sheltering space, intimate and enclosed. You sat down, feeling the garden embrace you, and simply breathed, simply existed, simply were. From here, you could see back toward the pond through a gap in the plantings, could see the moon's reflection still perfect on its surface. You could also see forward toward other parts of the garden, a vegetable patch with tall tomato plants staked and tied, a herb spiral spiraling upward toward the sky, paths branching and interweaving in patterns that suggested exploration and discovery. But you didn't need to explore further. You had found what you came for, though you hadn't known you were looking for anything at all. You had found quiet. You had found peace. You had found a place outside of time where you could simply rest, where the demands of the world could not reach you, where you could remember what it felt like to exist without the constant pressure to do, to achieve, to become something other than what you already were. A cat appeared from behind the herb spiral, moving with that peculiar grace that cats possess, silent and deliberate and entirely self-contained. It was a tabby, its stripes showing silver and charcoal in the moonlight, its eyes reflecting green gold when it turned to look at you. For a moment, you locked eyes with this creature, and you felt a strange kinship. Both of you solitary visitors to the garden, both of you appreciating its peace, both of you belonging here completely. Even though neither of you had built or planted or tended it, the cat approached without fear, winding around your legs in that boneless way cats have, its purr a low rumble that you felt more than heard. You reached down and stroked its soft fur, feeling the warmth of its body, the vibration of its contentment. It leapt up onto the bench beside you and settled in, curling into a perfect circle of cat, its purr continuing like a small engine of joy. There was something profoundly calming about the cat's presence, its absolute contentment with this moment, its complete lack of concern for anything beyond immediate comfort and safety. Cats were experts in the art of being, you thought. They didn't worry about yesterday's hunting success or tomorrow's meals. They found a warm spot, a gentle hand, and they settled in, fully present, fully alive in this single moment. You sat together on the bench, human and cat, sharing the night garden's peace. The moon continued its slow arc across the sky. The flowers continued their silent blooming. The earth continued its eternal turning, carrying you through space at speeds you couldn't comprehend, while simultaneously you sat perfectly still, anchored to this bench, to this moment, to this profound sense of rightness. Your eyes grew heavy again, heavier than before. The cat's purr was hypnotic, its rhythm pulling you deeper into relaxation. Your hand rested on its warm fur, rising and falling slightly with each of the cat's breaths, and you found your own breathing synchronizing with this smaller creature's. Found yourself drifting into a state somewhere between waking and sleeping, where thoughts became dreamlike, and the boundary between self and world grew thin and permeable. After a time of sitting with the cat, a time that might have been minutes or hours, you couldn't tell, the small creature stretched, yawned, and leaped down from the bench, disappearing back into the shadows as silently as it had arrived. You watched it go with a smile, grateful for its companionship, grateful for its reminder of how simple peace could be. Standing again required effort, as if gravity had grown stronger while you sat, or as if the earth was reluctant to let you leave this resting place. But something called you onward, a sense that the garden still had more to show you, more gifts to offer this night. The path led you toward the section you had glimpsed earlier, the small orchard, where fruit trees grew in neat rows. As you approached, the scent reached you first. Apples and pears, the sweet fermentation of fallen fruit, the green smell of leaves beginning to prepare for autumn's release. The trees here were old, their trunks gnarled and thick, their branches heavy with fruit that glowed softly in the moonlight. Apples like small moons themselves, pears with their distinctive curved shape, plums dark as the night sky. Some fruit had already fallen, creating a carpet beneath each tree that released its perfume as you stepped on it, the overripe sweetness rising up around you. You walked between the rows, trailing your hand along rough bark, feeling the life force still strong within these ancient trees. They had been here a long time, you sensed, had weathered storms and droughts, had survived hard frosts and blistering summers, had bloomed and fruited year after year, feeding countless creatures, human and otherwise. Each tree was different, you noticed. This one leaned slightly to the south, following the sun. That one had a hollow in its trunk where birds had nested. Another bore scars from some long-ago injury, lightning strike perhaps, or the careless blade of a saw, but had healed around the damage, growing new bark over the wound, incorporating the injury into its story without letting it define its future. There was a lesson there, you thought, drowsily. The trees didn't dwell on their scars or lament their imperfections. They simply continued growing, continued reaching toward light, continued doing what trees do, blooming in spring, fruiting in summer and fall, resting in winter, then beginning the cycle again. They accepted what had happened and moved on, not because they were noble or enlightened, but because that was the only way to survive, the only way to thrive. An apple tree stood before you, its branches so heavy with fruit that they nearly touched the ground. You reached up and plucked a single apple, feeling its weight in your palm, its smooth skin cool against your fingers. Without thinking, you bit into it, and the taste exploded across your tongue, sweet and tart at once, crisp and juicy, more intensely apple than any apple you'd ever tasted in a store. This was what an apple was supposed to taste like, you realized. Grown slowly, ripened naturally, picked at the perfect moment, and eaten right there, still carrying the warmth of the day and the coolness of the night. You ate slowly, savoring each bite, letting the juice run down your chin without caring, lost in the simple pleasure of fresh fruit on a summer night. When you reached the core, you tossed it beneath the tree, where it would decompose and feed the soil, returning its nutrients to the earth that had created it, completing the cycle. Beneath the largest apple tree, someone had placed a hammock strung between two thick branches swaying slightly in the breeze. It looked impossibly inviting, that hammock. A suspended cradle, a floating bed, a place to rest between earth and sky. You approached it cautiously, testing its strength, then carefully climbed in, feeling it envelope you, conform to your body, hold you safely. The fabric was soft against your skin, worn smooth by weather and use, and the gentle swaying motion as you settled was hypnotic, like being rocked in someone's arms, like being a child again, and small enough to be held and comforted. From the hammock, you could see up through the apple tree's branches to the sky beyond. The leaves created a lacework pattern against the stars, constantly shifting as the breeze moved them, creating an ever-changing kaleidoscope of light and shadow. It was mesmerizing, this dance of leaves and light, this interplay of growth and space, solid and void. You let your eyes unfocus slightly, watching the patterns without trying to interpret them, letting them simply be what they were, beautiful, meaningless, perfect. Your body relaxed completely into the hammock's embrace, every muscle releasing, every joint softening. The swaying motion continued, gentle and constant, like floating on calm water, like drifting on a cloud. The orchard around you was full of quiet sounds, apples occasionally falling with soft thumps, leaves rustling, insects humming as they moved from fruit to fruit, the distant call of an owl somewhere deeper in the garden. Each sound was distinct, but also part of a larger whole, a symphony of night sounds that required no conductor, no score, just each element contributing its own note at its own time. You thought about cycles, how everything in the garden moved in circles. Seeds became plants, became flowers, became fruit, became seeds again. Water fell as rain, nourished the soil, was drawn up through roots, released by leaves, returned to the sky, fell again as rain. Life became death, became life. Over and over, eternally. Nothing ever truly lost, but only transformed. And you were part of these cycles too, weren't you? Not separate from nature, but embedded within it, made of the same elements, following the same patterns. You too needed growth and rest, effort and release, waking and sleeping. You too moved in cycles, seasons of energy and seasons of withdrawal, times of blooming and times of dormancy. Perhaps that was why the garden felt so peaceful, you thought drowsily. It reminded you of these natural rhythms, helped you remember that you didn't have to push constantly, didn't have to always be in bloom. There was a time for rest, and that time was now, here, in this hammock, in this orchard, in this garden of peace. The hammock swayed gently, and your eyelids grew impossibly heavy. The moon had climbed so high now that it was almost directly overhead, looking down at you through the apple tree's branches like a benevolent face, a guardian watching over your rest. You're not sure when you climbed out of the hammock, or if you only dreamed that you did, but somehow you found yourself walking again, moving through the orchard toward its far edge, where the cultivated trees gave way to wilder growth. The path here was less defined, more of a suggestion than a directive, winding through tall grass that brushed against your legs as you walked. The garden was changing again, becoming less structured, more natural, as if you were moving from the human-made spaces back toward something older, something that existed before paths and plantings and plans. The grass grew taller here, mixed with wildflowers that had seeded themselves, Queen Anne's lace and black-eyed Susans, chicory and yarrow. All of them closed now for the night, but still visible as darker shapes against the silver grass. Ahead, the path opened into a meadow, and you stopped at its edge, taking in the sight before you. The meadow was large, perhaps an acre or more, and the grass here had been left to grow wild, waving in the breeze like water, creating waves and patterns that flowed across the landscape. Scattered throughout were wildflowers in abundance, some still showing color even in the moonlight, others just dark shapes, but all of them beautiful in their random distribution, their natural chaos. You stepped into the meadow, and immediately the grass rose around you, waist-high in places, heavy with seed heads that caught at your clothes and left their offerings. Small seeds that would fall away later, perhaps find purchase in some other place, perhaps grow into new plants that would create new meadows. This was how wildness spread, you thought, not through careful planning, but through this scattershot abundance, this willingness to waste 1,000 seeds if even one would sprout and thrive. The ground beneath your feet was uneven here, rising and falling in gentle swells, and you realized you were walking over what must once have been a field, allowed to return to nature, to heal into wildness. There might have been crops here once, neat rows of corn or wheat or vegetables, but that time was gone, and the land had reclaimed itself, had remembered how to be wild, had returned to patterns older than agriculture, older than humanity itself. You walked slowly through the meadow, your path determined not by any trail, but by instinct and whim. The grass whispered secrets as you passed, the seed heads rattled their dry music, and occasionally your feet would find a bare patch where some animal had made its nest or rested. You could see these paths, rabbit runs and deer trails, crisscrossing the meadow, evidence of the other lives lived here, the parallel existence of creatures who claimed this space as their own. In the meadow's center, someone had left a blanket spread on the ground. A quilt, actually, pieced together from fabrics in shades of blue and white and cream, soft from many washings, perfect for lying on and looking up at the sky. You made your way toward it, drawn by its invitation to rest, to lie down, to surrender completely to the night's embrace. You lowered yourself onto the quilt, feeling its softness beneath you, and then lay back, stretching out fully. your arms at your sides, your legs extended, your whole body supported by the earth below. The quilt smelled faintly of lavender and sunshine, as though it had been dried outside on a warm day. And this scent mixed with the meadow's own perfume, grass and flowers and earth and air. Above you, the sky was a dome of infinite darkness pierced by infinite light. The stars seemed closer here than they had anywhere else in the garden, as though lying down had somehow brought you nearer to them, as though the meadow was a place where earth and sky met and merged. You could see the Milky Way clearly now, that great river of stars flowing across the darkness. Billions of suns so far away, they appeared as a luminous cloud, a bridge between worlds. You breathed deeply, pulling the night air into your lungs, and with each breath, you felt yourself becoming lighter, less solid, as though you might float up from the quilt and drift among those stars. Your body felt both heavy and weightless at once, heavy with relaxation, with the complete release of all tension, but weightless in the way that things feel when they're perfectly balanced, perfectly at rest. The grass around you whispered continuously, a sound like the ocean, like breathing, like the voice of the earth itself. You listened to it without trying to understand it, letting it wash over you in waves, letting it carry away the last remnants of thought, of worry, of anything that wasn't this moment, this peace, this perfect stillness. A meteor shower had begun. You hadn't noticed it at first, but now you could see them, shooting stars streaking across the sky in ones and twos and occasionally in bright cascades, as though the stars themselves were celebrating, as though the universe was putting on a show just for you. You watched them fall, these bits of cosmic dust burning up in Earth's atmosphere, and each one seemed like a small blessing, a tiny gift from the infinite to the finite, from the eternal to the temporal. Time dissolved completely here in the meadow. There was no before, no after, only this eternal now, stretching out in all directions. You had always been here, you felt, lying in this meadow under these stars, and you would always be here, somehow, even when your body rose and walked back through the garden, even when you returned to the world of clocks and calendars and deadlines. Some part of you would remain here forever, peaceful and complete, resting under the stars. Your breathing had become so slow and so deep that you barely felt it anymore. Each breath took a small eternity, air flowing in, filling you, then flowing out, emptying you, then the long pause before the next breath began. In that pause, there was nothing, no thought, no sensation, no self, just pure existence, consciousness without content, being without doing. The quilt beneath you seemed to grow softer, or perhaps you were sinking into it, becoming part of it, your body merging with fabric and earth and grass. The boundary between you and the world grew thin and thinner still, until you weren't quite sure where you ended and the meadow began. Were those your hands at your sides, or were they roots growing down into the soil? Was that your breath or the wind moving through the grass? Above, the stars wheeled slowly in their ancient patterns, and you wheeled with them, held in the earth's gentle grip as it turned through space. You were falling and flying at once, spinning through the cosmos while lying perfectly still, traveling millions of miles while moving not at all. The moon had reached its zenith now, hanging directly overhead, and its light fell on you like a blanket, like a blessing, like the gentle hand of some benevolent presence tucking you in for the night. You felt so safe here, so protected, so completely at ease that even the concept of danger seemed foreign, impossible, like something from another world that had no bearing on this perfect moment. The meadow had grown quieter, or perhaps you had simply stopped hearing in the ordinary way. Sound had become something you felt rather than heard. Vibrations moving through the earth and air, entering your body, not through your ears, but through every pore, every cell. The grass's whisper was inside you now, was your own breathing. The cricket's song was your heartbeat. The wind's movement was your blood flowing through your veins. You were part of the garden, truly part of it now, woven into its fabric so completely that there was no separation. You had dissolved into the night, into the peace, into the infinite gentleness of this place, where nothing could harm you, where nothing was required of you, where you could simply be. Images began to drift through your mind, but they were soft and formless, more like feelings than thoughts. You saw yourself walking through the garden, but it was you and not you at the same time. A version of yourself from above, from outside, as though you were both the walker and the one watching the walker. You saw the gate, the fountain, the oak tree, the pond, each place you'd been glowing softly in your memory, like lanterns lighting a path. But the path led nowhere, you realized. Or rather, it led here, to this meadow, to this quilt, to this moment of complete surrender. This was the destination, this peace, this rest, this letting go of everything except existence itself. The stars above began to blur slightly, their points of light spreading and softening, and you understood in a distant way that your eyes were closing, that sleep was coming to claim you. But it didn't matter. Sleep or waking felt the same here. Both were just different flavors of peace, different ways of being present to the moment. You thought about the garden and realized it wasn't just a place. It was a state of being, a way of existing in the world. It was available always, this garden, if you could only remember how to find it. Not the physical place with its paths and flowers and trees, but the inner garden, the sanctuary of peace that existed within you, that you carried always, even when you couldn't sense it. The gate was always there, waiting for you to open it. The oak tree was always there, ready to shelter you. The pond was always there, reflecting back your true self, calm and clear. The meadow was always there, offering you a place to lie down and rest, to release your burdens, to remember that you were a part of something larger than yourself. All you had to do was remember. Remember to breathe slowly. Remember to notice the small beauties around you. Remember that you didn't have to earn your right to rest. That peace was your birthright. That you belonged here in this garden, in this moment, in this world. The quilt seemed to rise around you now, or perhaps you were sinking deeper into it. But either way, you felt wrapped and held, cradled like a child, safe and warm and infinitely loved. The meadow grass bent over you, creating a canopy, a shelter, and the stars looked down with what felt like tenderness. Like the universe itself was watching over your rest. Your thoughts became more scattered now, fragmenting into images and sensations that didn't quite connect into narrative. The white petals of the moonflowers, the cat's warm purr, the apple's sweet taste, the water's gentle ripple. all of it swirling together in a soft kaleidoscope of memory and feeling. Somewhere very far away, you knew that the world continued, that beyond the garden, people were rushing and worrying and striving. But here, in this perfect bubble of peace, time had stopped, or moved so slowly as to be imperceptible. Here, nothing could touch you. Here, you were safe. The moon's light grew softer, more diffuse, as though it was being filtered through layers of silk. The stars dimmed slightly, not disappearing, but becoming gentler, less insistent. Even the grass's whisper grew quieter, fading into a susurrus so soft it was almost silence. You were falling now, falling softly and slowly through layers of consciousness, each layer softer than the last, each one drawing you deeper into peace. Falling through moonlight and starlight, through memory and dream, through thought and beyond thought, into a place where nothing existed but this floating, this drifting, this gentle descent into rest. The garden had become something else now, something that existed more in feeling than in form. You could still sense it around you, the grass, the sky, the earth, but it was all becoming softer, more translucent, as though you were seeing it through layers of gauze or mist. The boundary between the garden and dream had blurred until there was no telling where one ended and the other began. Colors had faded to the gentlest pastels, silver and pearl, soft blue and softer white, shades of gray like dove feathers, like dawn light, like the moment just before darkness becomes light or light becomes darkness. Everything was muted, gentle, kind. You floated in this in-between space, neither fully awake nor fully asleep, suspended in that magical twilight consciousness where anything seemed possible, where the ordinary rules of reality loosened their grip and the world became fluid, changeable, responsive to the gentlest wish or thought. In this state, you understood things without words, knew things without learning them. You understood that the garden had always been inside you, that every place you'd visited, the gate, the oak tree, the pond, the orchard, the meadow, was really a room in the vast mansion of your own soul. You had been walking through yourself all along, discovering your own depths, your own capacity for peace. The oak tree was your strength, your rootedness, your connection to all that was solid and enduring. The pond was your clarity, your ability to reflect truth, your depth of feeling. The orchard was your capacity for growth and nourishment, for taking in the world and transforming it into sustenance. The meadow was your wildness, your freedom, your connection to all that was untamed and natural within you. And now, lying here in this liminal space, you were discovering the deepest room of all, the place of pure rest, pure being, where nothing was required and everything was already complete. This was the garden's secret heart, the place it had been leading you toward all along. You didn't need to do anything here. You didn't need to be anyone here. You could simply dissolve into peace. Let yourself become as insubstantial as mist, as quiet as moonlight, as still as stones. You could let go of everything, every responsibility, every worry, every identity, and just float in this sea of gentleness, held up by something larger than yourself, something that would never let you fall. The quilt beneath you had disappeared, or rather, you had become one with it, and with the earth beneath it, and with the planets spinning through space beneath that. You were held by gravity and motion at once, spinning and still, moving and motionless, a paradox that made perfect sense in this dreaming state. Above you, Or was it below you or all around you? The stars had become something other than stars. They were possibilities now, potentials, all the dreams you'd ever had and all the ones you hadn't thought of yet, scattered across the darkness like seeds across soil, waiting for the right season to sprout and grow. You felt such tenderness toward yourself in this moment, such compassion for the being you were, flawed and beautiful, struggling and strong, doing its best to navigate this complex world. You saw yourself clearly, without judgment, and you forgave yourself for every mistake, every failing, every time you'd been less than perfect. Because perfection wasn't the point, was it? Growth was the point. Learning was the point. Becoming more fully yourself was the point. And right now, in this moment, you were perfect exactly as you were, tired and ready for rest, open and receptive, willing to let go and trust that you would be held. This willingness itself was a kind of courage, a kind of strength that looked like weakness, but wasn't. Knowing when to rest took wisdom. Knowing how to surrender took trust. The moon had dimmed to almost nothing now. Or perhaps your eyes had finally closed. You couldn't tell anymore, couldn't tell the difference between seeing and imagining, between the garden outside and the garden inside. It was all one garden, all one piece, all one great breathing presence that held everything in its gentle embrace. Your last conscious thought was of gratitude for this garden, for this peace, for this moment of complete rest. And then even that thought dissolved, and there was nothing left but the falling, the floating, the soft descent into the welcoming arms of sleep. In sleep, the garden continued, but it had transformed into something even more beautiful, more perfect than the waking garden had been. Here, in dream, the rules of reality didn't apply. Trees grew upward and downward at once, their roots and branches indistinguishable. Flowers bloomed and seeded and bloomed again in the space of a breath. The moon and sun existed together in a sky that was both day and night, both dark and light, both everything and nothing. You walked through this dream garden, or flew or drifted. Movement here was all the same. And everywhere you went, you found exactly what you needed. When you wanted company, a friend appeared beside you, their face shifting and changing, but their presence comforting and familiar. When you wanted solitude, you were suddenly alone in a vast space, peaceful and content. The garden showed you things you had forgotten, childhood places you'd loved, people you'd known, moments of perfect happiness that had been buried under years of adult concerns. But it showed them to you gently, without pain or regret, just as memories to be acknowledged and released, like petals falling from a rose. You saw yourself at different ages, all existing simultaneously, child and adult, young and old, who you had been and who you would become, all present at once in this eternal garden where time had no meaning. And you felt love for all these versions of yourself, acceptance of each one's journey, understanding of each one's struggles. The dream garden had no boundaries. It extended infinitely in all directions, yet you could cross from one end to the other in a single step. It contained everything, forests and deserts, mountains and oceans, cities and wilderness, all existing in the same space, overlapping and interpenetrating, each one perfect and complete. But mostly, the dream garden was soft. Everything was soft here, the ground beneath your feet, the air against your skin, the light falling on your face. soft and gentle and infinitely kind, like being held in the arms of something vast and loving, something that knew you completely and accepted you utterly. You met others in the dream garden sometimes, other dreamers perhaps, or maybe just aspects of yourself wearing different faces. They smiled at you, and you smiled back, and there was no need for words because everything was already understood. You were all part of the same dream, the same garden, the same vast consciousness that was dreaming itself into existence, moment by moment. Sometimes you stood in the dream garden. Sometimes you sat or lay down. Sometimes you dissolved into pure awareness, becoming the garden itself, the trees and grass, the moon and stars, the earth and sky. And in those moments of complete merging, you understood something fundamental about existence, something that would fade when you woke, but would leave a residue of peace, a knowing beyond words that everything was exactly as it should be. Eventually, though in dreams, eventually has no meaning, you found yourself back in the meadow, lying on the quilt under the stars. But this time, you knew it was time to leave, time to make your way back through the garden to the gate, back to the world beyond. The knowledge didn't bring sadness. How could it, when you understood now that the garden would always be here, always accessible, always waiting for you to return? This wasn't goodbye. It was simply, see you later, see you next time, see you in dreams and quiet moments, and whenever you needed refuge from the world's noise. You sat up slowly, taking a moment to orient yourself, to remember your body and its boundaries, to become solid and separate again after the dissolving of sleep and dream. The sky had changed. It was still dark, but there was a quality to the darkness that suggested dawn was coming, that the night was preparing to give way to day. You stood and folded the quilt carefully, leaving it in a neat square for the next visitor who might need its comfort. Then you began walking back through the meadow, retracing your steps, saying goodbye to each part of the garden as you passed. Goodbye to the meadow with its wild grass and scattered stars. Goodbye to the orchard with its generous trees and sweet fruit. Goodbye to the night garden with its fragrant blooms that would close again at dawn. Goodbye to the pond with its perfect reflection and peaceful depths. Goodbye to the oak tree, ancient and strong, holding the garden's heart. Each goodbye was tender, but not sorrowful. These places would be here when you returned. They would wait for you, patient and unchanging, ready to offer their peace whenever you needed it. The sky was definitely lighter now, shifting from black to deep blue, the stars beginning to fade as the sun prepared to rise. You reached the fountain and paused to trail your fingers in its water one last time, letting it wash away the last residue of sleep, welcoming you back to wakefulness. And then the gate appeared before you, the same gate you had entered through. Was it hours ago? Days? A lifetime? Its green paint gleaming softly in the pre-dawn light, the wisteria overhead stirring in a gentle breeze. You placed your hand on the gate and turned back for one last look at the garden. In the growing light, it looked different than it had in moonlight. Less magical, perhaps, but no less beautiful. Just a garden, you might think if you didn't know better. Just plants and paths and peaceful spaces. But you knew better now. You knew this was a place of transformation, a sanctuary, a refuge. You knew that what looked like just a garden was really a doorway to peace, a reminder of what was possible when you allowed yourself to slow down, to rest, to simply be. The gate swung open under your hand, and you stepped through, back into the world beyond. Behind you, the gate closed with a soft click, and the garden settled back into its timeless peace, waiting for the next weary traveler who would find their way to its gate. You carried the garden with you now, in your breathing, in your slower heartbeat, in the deep sense of peace that had settled into your bones. You carried it in your memory of moonlight and starlight, of ancient trees and still water, of soft grass and gentle breezes. And somewhere deep inside, in a place beyond words and conscious thought, you carried the knowledge that whenever you needed it, the garden would be there, its gate waiting to open, its paths ready to welcome you home to peace, to rest, to the gentle embrace of a world where time moved slowly and everything was exactly as it should be. The garden sleeps now, and so can you, held in its memory, wrapped in its peace, safe in the knowledge that rest is always available, that peace is always possible, that you are always welcome to return. Sleep well, dear traveler. The garden will be here when you wake.